It won't.
It all started in the 1800s, well, the late 1800s. Francis, Dell, Lorraine, Marge, Don, Gord, and Josephine. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Humphreys, and I have the privilege of doing the first Johnston family tree interview. Today's first guest and the matriarch of the Foote family, she is a daughter, mother, and a grandmother. Today, she is going to talk about her life and share her stories for all to see and enjoy for years to come. Mrs. Barbara King, Foote, Johnston. Barb, how are you today?
I am fine, Michael.
What do you think of that introduction?
It's a lot of names, a lot of people.
There is. Well, it was quite a family, wasn't it, the Johnston family?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. And if I believe there was 7. And did you know them all relatively well?
No, I didn't. I only knew aunts and, 2 uncles, one a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And so obviously your connection with the Johnston family is your mother,
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Do you want to share a little bit about your mother? What your take on it is? What we were talking about before recording here, maybe.
Mother, I think, was the 4th eldest.
Okay.
Or the 3rd eldest. I'm not positive. She grew up in Fergus. She was very athletic. Met my dad there. I don't know.
Okay. No, that's fine. Because I know even with my grandmother, who was Dell, she shared some things from periodically, but I never really got a lot other than more when she was in the early 20s and starting to, when she met my grandfather and all of that. So as time went on. So it was getting back to Fergus, as you mentioned.
And I think Mother I think they all wanted to leave Fergus. And
right.
They headed to the big city.
Yes.
For jobs when they were younger. Yeah.
And that was Toronto, I guess.
And I think your Nana and my mother went to the Shaw Business College.
Oh, okay.
So they had fairly good jobs.
Mm-hmm. They worked at the bank. Or my grandmother.
Yes, so did my mother.
Yeah, that was a big thing to do. So since a young girl, what's your first memory of being up in Fergus? Do you recall going back there for...
Yes, I do. It was more... I don't remember the Johnson family. They were living on the main street where there was Grandpa Johnson owned the furniture store. I remember, I was very, very young being there. Most of my memories of Fergus, early memories, are being with my grandmother Foote.
Okay.
They also lived in Fergus.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, they're vague memories.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's fine. Now, when you were up there, did you see cousins?
Oh, when I was a teenager, of course, I remember Fergus. Fergus smells remind me of Fergus. I remember hanging out at the pool with our cousins, and that was sort of the place to be when you were a teenager.
Right.
And whenever I smell Lifebuoy soap or chlorine, I think of the Fergus pool.
Oh, okay.
It was a great spot, and I used to go and stay with Aunt Jo and Sandra and Val and Bev.
Okay.
And that was a very happy time. I'd spend 2 weeks every summer.
Oh, wow,
going
okay.
To Fergus.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
I had my first kiss in Fergus.
Oh, and do you remember who that was?
His name was Jack Funston, I think. Yes, you never forget your first kiss.
There you go.
Yes.
Very good, very good. And did you ever get an opportunity to visit the old family home in Bellwood?
We drove by it, but I think very shortly then, wasn't it Lake Bellwood? It was flooded.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's now, I don't think it's standing anymore. I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, I'm quite honestly, I'm unaware. I don't know what was in Bellwood, and I know there's a picture somewhere.
Yes,
of the
there
home.
are pictures of them all on the big front porch.
Right,
It was a beautiful home. And
Yeah, well, that's great. Now, your mom, so she came to Toronto.
Yes.
And she got a job at the bank after going to college.
Shaw Business College
Shaw Business
in Toronto.
College. And she knew your dad before that?
Yes, I think she'd always had a crush on him, and they had dated, and then he was quite the man about town. I think he had many lady friends, and they eventually got married, and
obviously had 3 children.
They had 3 children, and then he went off to war when she was pregnant with me.
Right. Okay. And when your dad got back from the war, his name was obviously Bert Foote.
Captain Albert Foote.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you remember when your dad was born?
I don't.
Okay. And what about your mom? Do you remember her birthday or?
Dad's birthday was January 2nd. And mother's, I would need Joni for this. It was in February.
Okay.
Yes.
No, not a problem. I guess I shouldn't have rephrased that question the way I did, because I was saying, do you remember when he was born? Well, of course you wouldn't. But it was more, I guess, looking for his birthday.
Yes.
Things like that. So that's fine. Now, when they came here, I know they obviously settled in Whitby. And your dad, okay.
They lived in Hamilton first.
Oh, okay.
That's where we first settled when he came back from the war.
Okay.
There were wartime houses built, and I think they gave enlisted people a first chance. And I remember that house just being so exciting, our very first house. And going back one day after John and I were married to see it in this house that I thought was so huge was a little wee cabin of a place.
Right.
But I have many memories again of that.
Okay. And then from Hamilton to what was the next?
Hamilton to Whitby.
Oh, okay. And why Whitby? Was there a reason?
He was he was with McCall Frontenac.
Okay.
And he was a salesman. And I think they transferred him here.
Okay. All right. So that's why. Good. How are you? Good. So you got transferred here, and he worked there for.
He worked there for a number of years, and then coincidentally, they wanted to move him to Port Hope or Coburg, and I remember plans for a house in Port Hope. And I forget how old I was. I was probably 12 maybe at the time. And very sad about it because, of course, you've just amassed a bunch of friends and you have your niche in the world. So then he left McCall Frontenac and went as a salesman for Anderson Box Factory. And we stayed in Whitby.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so he stayed there for his whole career, or?
Yes.
Did he? Okay.
Yes.
And did your mom venture out at all and work outside of the home?
Yes, she did. She did the books for the gas station at the corner of the street. She, no big jobs.
Right.
Yeah, just something to keep a little extra income.
Sure.
Yeah.
Very good. And did they volunteer in their community?
Oh, very much so.
Right.
Yes, they were
What
both
types of things would they have
very
done?
giving. Well, Mother always worked the elections. That was another thing. She was a returning officer, so she got a little extra money every election for that. I'm racking my brain. I'm trying to remember, but I do know that they were both very involved in...
Always on the go?
Always on
Always
the go.
helping somebody?
Yes, because my sister came along when I was 13, and they were so social all the time that I would really feel I almost raised my sister because I was babysitting all the time.
Right. Okay, well, you were at that prime age for babysitting and looking after. Very right. It's good. So what was a day like when you were going to school, and of course your brother David and Joni? What was a typical day in the household of the Footes? What time would you arise in the morning? What time, what was a typical breakfast? Just what was the kind of the average regular going to school? Or because of that age gap, maybe, you were already kind of on your way. Joni was getting school.
It couldn't have been too exciting because I don't remember my breakfast. I know I always loved toast. So did Joni.
Right.
There's a story about toast.
Okay. Do you want to share that story?
Yes. When I say that I used to babysit a lot after we're talking grade 7, grade 8, the kids would want to go to the park afterwards after school, and I'd be all excited, and I would come out of school, and there would be Mum with Joni in the carriage, and she was going off with friends, and I would take Joni. And then high school, the same sort of thing happened, and all the friends used to hang out at the local restaurant in town, and I would take Joan to the restaurant, and she was maybe, 3 at this point.
Right.
And that was also when I started smoking.
Oh boy. Okay.
And I would always have a Coke, and I would order her toast, and everybody loved her. She's the cutest little baby. And that night at home, Dad, who'd been on the road, came home and wanted to get caught up. And he said, Joni, so what did you and Barb do today? And Joni said, well, we went to the restaurant, and Barb had a Coke and a cigarette. And I had toast. I said, I never did, Joni. She said, yes, you did, Mom. Don't tell a lie. So that's how they found out I smoked.
How long did you smoke?
Too long.
Okay.
40 years probably.
Mm-hmm.
And I have COPD.
Okay.
Which doesn't give me too many problems yet.
Yeah.
Hopefully it won't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what memories would you have of your mom in her life? What would be if someone said to give us a story about your mom? What kind of story would you like to share with everybody? Do you remember one?
Well, they lived in the neighborhood, all their lives in Whitby, and the same neighborhood, and everybody loved her. She was very giving.
Mm-hmm.
But I always felt there was an area of unhappiness about her, and I wondered if it was because of my father being away with his job.
Right.
She was a grass widow most of her life. Mm-hmm. And I think she was lonely.
Right.
And Joni and David, of course, filled that gap. I was gone then I was 21 when I left home. But, I always felt she was a lonely person.
And with, do you think your parents had a big impact on your life? Or do you think life itself dealt you that card?
No, I think it's certainly a combination. Mm-hmm. I think my father had a bigger impact on me. He was a very loving, giving, funny, open sort of fellow. I related more to him than my mother.
Right.
And it may have been because I was the eldest and had to.
Yeah. Did you receive an allowance when you were a kid?
Yes, I think I did. I remember maybe 25 cents.
Okay. Yeah. And what would you spend that 25 cents on? Would you save it?
There was a corner store, and you could get something called Black Balls.
Yeah.
Which, pardon me.
Yes.
You get 3 for a penny.
Yeah.
And they would last forever. You'd suck on them, and they'd change colors, and then there'd be a little caraway seed or something at the end.
Right. Very good.
And wax lips. We used to have wax lips.
Now, your name, Barbara. Where does Barbara come from?
I think I was named after Barbara Ann Scott.
Oh, the skater.
Who was a young...
skater, right?
Skater,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
And she was, I think, practicing for the Olympics and when I was born. And I think that's...
Yeah. Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. Did you have nicknames growing up?
Did I? My brother used to call me.
Can you share that? Hold on.
No, I guess I didn't have nicknames.
No. What about as an adult? Did someone...
Now people in Port Hope call me Barbie or Barbie doll. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very
good. Very good. And when were you born?
I was born March 9th, 1944 at 6:30 in the morning at Toronto General Hospital.
Okay.
I still have the telegram that was sent to my father overseas.
Oh, very good. And were you baptized?
Yes.
And they ask, what religion are you? But I don't know if that's so fair to share with everybody.
Well,
everyone.
I always, for years, went to the United Church. When I was a teenager, up until I left Whitby, I sang in the choir in the United Church. And then through our time in Canada, I belonged to the United Church. And then we were transferred to the U.S., and there's no United Church in the United States.
Okay.
So I didn't really attend church, but I would say I'm spiritual.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you don't attend church now?
No, I don't.
Okay. And did your parents attend church?
They used to drop us off, special occasions.
Yeah.
And then my father had a health crisis where he'd had a ruptured aorta. And he likes to tell the story that one day he was out for a walk after he'd been healed and helped by Sunnybrook Hospital, that he was walking along and saw a burning bush, and it spoke to him and said, I gave you back your life. You need to give me some time.
Right.
And so he started regularly going to church.
Oh,
yeah.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Now, you've already talked about your home in Whitby and Hamilton. Can you tell us a little story or a memory of your brother that you'd like to share with everybody? Your brother, John David?
My brother, John David. He was certainly the family favorite.
Oh, okay.
He was as cute as a button and had a bad temper.
Okay.
And I remember one time, and I also had to babysit him, and I would want to hurry home from school to watch American Bandstand. And of course, then he'd come home from school. He's 5 years younger than me. And he'd want to watch his cartoons. And I was also had to do ironing. So I was ironing in the living room, watching American Bandstand. And he whips in and turns on the cartoons. And we had an argument. And I said, I'm older than the boss. And I put American Bandstand back on. And he picked the iron up, and he was going to plant it right in the middle of my back. So there were many. We always teased each other, and we always, but we loved each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, he's always been
I taught him how to dance, and I think taught him what girls like. You have to be polite to them.
Yeah, very good. And what about Joni?
Joni was like my little doll. I used to, once I left home, I used to love buying her clothes and coming home, and she'd bring her friends over because they all sort of admired this great big sister from the city. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was exciting for you even.
Yes. No. Yeah. And we had a very loving, close family. Yeah.
Well, that's nice. That's good. Now you're older, and did you go to college or university?
No, unfortunately I didn't. Mm-hmm. I never finished high school.
Mm-hmm.
But throughout the course of my married life, I've taken many courses at different universities. Mm-hmm. And one course I signed up for was remembering techniques, and I forgot to go to my first class. So that was at St. Clair College, and is it St. Clair in Chatham?
Right.
Anyway, I've always wanted to learn. I always take courses.
Right. Well, very good. Mm-hmm. Now, you got married when? You got married young?
I got married. Mother and Dad would never let me leave home.
Okay.
For somehow you had to stay in the house. And my very first summer away from home was Grand Bend. And I met a fellow there that I just fell instantly in love with. He was from Toronto, and he was a wonderful dancer and very handsome. And I ended up getting married to him, I think, mainly because I wanted to get away from the house.
Oh, okay.
My girlfriends were all working in Toronto, and I think Father thought maybe I'd fall into a den of iniquity if I went on my own.
Right.
So that only lasted a year.
Okay.
And then one day I was crossing from Eaton's to the Bay, or Eaton's to Simpsons, whatever it was. Yeah. And there was a female police officer who was one of my dear friends in high school directing traffic. And that was very exciting. At the time, I'd been living with Aunt and Uncle. Mm-hmm. And they were going south, and I had to find another place while they were away. And I asked Ingrid if I could live with she and her friend for a month. Mm-hmm. And they said, sure. And that was the start of sort of a very exciting time for me, where I learned to live on my...
Where were you living then?
We were living on Redpath at one point, and Balloyle on the other.
Yeah, okay.
And that's where I met John on Balloyle Ave.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Right on. Very good.
So I was 25 when we got married.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And how many kids do you have?
I have 3 daughters. When I married John, he had a daughter, and his marriage had broken up, and his wife did not want the child at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So he had just finished university, and she was living with his parents, and so I came, finally met the parents, and they loved me, I loved them, and they kept wondering, why don't you get married?
Mm-hmm.
So we did, and I had an instant daughter. She was 6.
Oh, and what was her name?
Her name is Melissa,
Mm-hmm.
and so I raised her. And it's interesting, when she was a teenager and we were all in a group and would meet somebody new, they would think that she had all my mannerisms and really looked like me. And,
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
so there's
interesting.
Melissa.
Right,
And then when I was 28, I had Megan.
right.
So she is the middle daughter. And then, not trying or anything, I found out when I was 40 that I was pregnant again, and I had Molly
Mm-hmm.
at 41.
Wow, wow.
So
And now you obviously, I believe you have some grandchildren.
I too. Melissa has 2 daughters, Madeline, who is 21,
Mm-hmm.
and Ridley, who is 18.
Mm-hmm.
And Megan has Graham. He is 8, going to be 8.
Mm-hmm.
And Molly has Broden, who's 4, and Rosie, who is 2.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Rosie, what kind of name is that?
Rosalind.
Oh, Rosalind, okay.
But we call her Rosie, which
Mhm.
suits her to a T.
Very good, very good. Now, going back to when you were a bit younger, you mentioned earlier you did some ironing and stuff. What other chores would you really hate to do as a child?
There was always a fight about doing dishes.
Okay.
I always wanted to wash the dishes, and David wanted to wash, and so there would be always fights over who was going to do the dishes. So we had to do the dishes every night. We had to keep our rooms tidy.
So the
Help
basic
with
stuff
ironing.
then. Yeah,
Yeah.
some of the basic stuff. That's good. And what kind of books did you read as a youngster?
Oh, the Nancy Drew mysteries. And then it turned out, when I was a teenager in high school, the author of the Nancy Drew mysteries, Leslie McFarland, moved to Whitby.
Oh, yeah.
And he and I became, he was a friend. He was
Yeah.
an older man, and I was friends with his stepdaughter.
Right.
Yeah, so that was very exciting.
Oh,
for me.
yeah. Yeah, that's neat. Now, do you remember having a favorite nursery rhyme or bedtime story, either that was read to you or you read to your kids or your grandchildren that you
Well,
do?
one that we've passed on down was one that my dad used to sing to us called "I Have a Horse That I Call Napoleon,"
Mm-hmm. Okay.
all on account of his bony parts.
Okay.
Red so fine you could see clear through him, hitched him up to my old milk cart. Down the road, a helter-skelter, mud's a-flying in my face. Sure as you're a sinner, I'm bound to be a winner. And a guy hollered milk, and I lost the race. And he used to bounce us on his knee and sing this.
Right.
And I do, my kids all sing it to their kids.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Now, I know you have a poem in your book here.
Mm-hmm.
And which daughter was it that wrote that?
It was Megan. She was
Megan?
going to Carleton.
Okay.
And it was her English course, and they had to do a story about their family.
Right.
And she's very, very creative. So she did artwork and poetry.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to share that poem with us now?
Sure.
Yeah.
It was about Grandpa Johnston,
Okay.
who was
Perfect. Yeah.
a mortician.
Mm-hmm.
And the poem goes, Song of the Mortician, Commander of the Dead, a brood valley from a livery stable into a funeral home. How did it feel to build an empire on coffins? Mortician, your eyes are haunted. What are you telling me? I could never gain happiness from a mortuary. Did your family run the funeral store while you attired in black? Or did they stand alongside comforting grievers that sought your strength? Money from the dead I could not keep. How did you maintain nobility in town? How did you learn to accept death? It's interesting.
That's excellent.
Because John and I have had 17 moves in our marriage.
Okay.
And at one point we were transferred to Oshawa, and I got a job in crematorium.
Oh.
Handling government papers, the process that involves death. And then when we were transferred to Waterloo, I worked part-time in the Edward R. Good Funeral Home, again in the office. And so I find it interesting.
Yeah. Everyone has a different take on it. Obviously she does, and a very powerful one too. And I just think it's fascinating. I think the older you get, as you know, I just lost my mother, and I think my brother and sister and I handled it very well.
Yes,
and I think we wanted to expose our mother rather than, sit back and keep it private.
Well, it's a celebration now of life, isn't it?
That's right.
Rather than a mourning.
That's right. There's nothing you can do. It doesn't matter about money or things or anything. We have to look at the positive. She'd had enough. She'd done her time, and she traveled, and she did a lot for us.
She did.
And
she had quite
a fantastic life. And so that's a positive thing. There's nothing you can do. So crying over spilt milk ain't gonna rectify the issue. So now, when you lost your parents, obviously that was a hard time.
Yes, it was a very hard time.
Did you want to share a little bit about that?
Well, I always, before my mother was really ill, I always felt that there was something going on, that she wasn't well. She had had cancer earlier in life, and it was a time when it wasn't talked about. Nobody discussed it. But then she seemed to kind of be slipping away. There seemed to be no joy in her life, except when she saw the grandchildren, of course.
Right.
They have fond memories of her. She had utmost patience playing cards and whatever grandmas do. But she was losing a bit of her mind, I think, near the end.
And how old was she when she passed?
She was in her late 70s.
Okay. And what about your father?
He was 82.
Okay.
And he'd had prostate cancer for years, and he handled it with such aplomb. The treatment for prostate cancer was that they gave you a female hormone that would suppress the male hormones, and so he had rather large breasts that he said most teenage girls would be jealous of. He was quite a character.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. Anyway, he knew that eventually it would metastasize somewhere, and it did. It went to his bones. I was living in Pennsylvania at the time, and my brother and sister and I took turns making sure that he could stay in his home.
Yeah. That's okay. It's all good memories.
Yes,
he was a great guy.
Yeah.
He was a great guy.
Yeah, he
was a lot of fun. Me being younger, I didn't know him as well as others, and my dad always talked about him. And I remember us going out with my mom and dad.
Richard.
Yeah. We'd go out and visit you guys and stuff out in Whitby. I remember when I was
loved Richard too when I was a teenager. I had such a crush on your dad.
Yeah.
I used to go and spend a week or two every summer also with Aunt Dell when Aunt and Uncle were living with them.
Right.
Yeah. And, Richard would, I think he was, at the time, he was dating your mom.
Right.
And I loved them both when they'd come. I just wanted to be in their presence.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's great. Now, as a child, did you have a favorite toy? A doll?
Cutout dolls. My friends and I remember lying in the sun on a blanket in the backyard for hours playing cutout dolls with friends. I don't even know if they have them anymore, but you'd have paper clothes that you'd dress them up.
Clip them around, yeah. And what were your favorite childhood games? Was there games that you guys would play? Or?
We used to play when Aunt and Uncle lived on Bayview Avenue in the older place. We used to play in the alleyway. It was I don't know, it was a ball game that you'd bounce the ball and you do clapsies and
Oh yeah.
twirlies, and we'd play it for hours with a little girl that lived next door. So that was a very favorite game, and
Right.
Monopoly for hours.
And what were the fads during your youth?
Oh, beehive hairdos, sort of white lips, really dark eyes, go-go boots, bell bottoms, sack dresses they were called. Looked like maybe you had a load in your pants. they poofed out down near your bottom at the back.
Oh, yeah.
And we used to feel so glamorous in them.
Right.
Yeah. So those were the fads.
Very good.
And I used to get from your Aunt Joan, they used to get hand-me-downs from a very wealthy relative in California.
Oh yes, yeah.
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 And I would get the hand-me-downs when Joan had finished with them.
Right.
And I just loved it. I could alter them and sort of make them into one of a kind.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, cool. Now, what grade school did you go to?
I went to, I can't remember the name of the school in Hamilton, where I did, I think, kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, and then went to King Street Public School in Whitby,
Okay.
and until grade 5, and then to Colburn Street Public School, and then to Henry District High School.
Very good.
Yeah.
And did you like school?
I loved the social aspect of school.
Right.
And of course, I loved a lot of my teachers,
Mm-hmm.
and always felt that the feeling was mutual.
And what was your favorite subject in school?
Oh, by and far English.
And was it easy for you?
English?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that why you think you liked it, or it was just you were fascinated by what it gave you or brought to you?
I think I was fascinated. Well, it was easy for me too, so that was probably one reason. But also, it just opened your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And what was your least favorite subject?
What do you think, Michael?
I can tell. Math?
Yes, math. Because right now, John and I are taking a navigation course.
Oh, okay.
For the boat.
For the boat, yeah.
And I finally gave up on it.
Yeah.
I just could not figure out dead reckoning and the algebra involved. And I said, you're just going to have to tutor me.
Yeah. Very good. And obviously your favorite subject then was English. And who was your favorite teacher?
My favorite teacher, gosh, I had a number of them. I loved our vice principal, Mr. Edgley. Was just the type of a principal every school should have. He knew every kid's name, and he was charming. And I also sang in the choir with him, and he used to pass me in the hall and say, "Hey, Blondie, how are you doing today?" And it just made you feel important. And I also, we had a teacher, Mr. Monroe, who taught English later on in high school, and he's since deceased.
Mm-hmm.
But he was just an actor in disguise. He was wonderful.
Very good. And do you still are in touch with fellow classmates, etc.?
Oh, yes.
Yeah? With all your moves that you've done, you've still been able to... Facebook, I would think, helps with that.
Facebook is fabulous, yes. Because there's so many people along the journey that we don't seem to have any time anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We're just so involved in other things to sit down and write a letter.
That's right. That's right.
So it's great.
Did you get good grades in school?
In public school, yes. Very good grades. In high school, I discovered boys and
social.
Yeah, not in all subjects.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. And what would you wear to school? What would be a typical dress? Those dresses you referred to us?
You should interview my friends. We used to wear crinolines, which poofed our skirts way out, bobby socks, saddle shoes. I used to think my ankles were far too skinny, and I would wear 2 pairs of bobby socks and a cuff to make them thick, and wish they were skinny now. Yeah.
And what activities did you involve yourself with? You've mentioned the choir. Was there sports that you participated in?
I was a cheerleader.
Okay.
Yeah, and I loved it, although I never could do a somersault.
Okay.
So when everybody else was doing handstands and somersaults, I'd do my jumps in the middle of them.
Right. Now, the restaurant you frequented, is it still around?
I don't think it is.
No.
I don't think it is. It was a high school, one of the seniors whose parents owned it, Danny Kwan.
Okay.
And it was just a great hangout. I remember cherry cokes. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And were you ever given any special awards for your studies or school activities that you remember?
Special awards. Letters for our high school sweater and some bars I remember on my sweater, but I can't remember what they were. It was clubs, maybe drama club. I'm not sure. Okay. I can't remember.
Describe yourself as a young adult. So you're living in downtown Toronto with your friends, and you meet John.
I was a character, I think, thanks to my dad.
Mm-hmm.
We used to hang out at the Embassy Hotel. On Bloor and Bel Air and around that area. I don't think it's there anymore. And down below was I think it was a lovely club, and they would have big names, but we never went there because we couldn't afford it. But upstairs was a beer hall. And that's where all the university kids used to hang out. Mm-hmm. And so we would go there, and I would lead sing-songs. And, I think I was fairly popular. Yeah.
I would think so. And so you never attended a college or whatever, but you got a few, still taking some courses in reference to all that. Yes. Yeah, very good. And what was your first job?
My first job was when I was a teenager, part-time, with a dry cleaners in Whitby. My father, I think, got it for me. Mm-hmm. And that didn't last long because there was kind of a voyeur that was oppressor of immigrant. And one day I was at the counter, and all of a sudden a hand was slipping over my shoulder to my front. And I said, "What?" I was terrified. I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "You don't buy the peach until you feel the peach." So my father ended that pretty quick.
I would say so.
And then I worked in a ladies' dress shop, which I quite loved. It was an upscale. It's no longer there. And then this was in Whitby when I was living at home. And then when we went to Toronto, I worked for a mortgage company, Traders Group Limited. I was with them for quite a few years.
And what was their address? Do you remember?
They were on Dundas at the end, in near Etobicoke. Mm-hmm. Started out with them on downtown somewhere, and then they moved out to the West End.
Very good. And when you were a child, did you have what you wanted to do when you get older? Did you have a dream, I want to be a singer maybe, or something like that nature?
I don't remember.
No?
I think...
most boys, I want to be a fireman and things like that. Or just,
yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember. I think I wanted to be an entertainer of sorts.
Yeah. Now, with all these jobs and experiences that you've had and you've shared with us today, do you think you made enough money to live comfortably enough for yourself?
Now, you mean?
Well, now, obviously.
Or
I think then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was nothing to live from paycheck to paycheck. Mm-hmm. The first thing was rent and some food. And I lived with two girls before I met John and Belloyle. And one was policewoman, and the other was eventually owned her own placement company. Mm-hmm. But we used to have wine and cheeses every Sunday, and we had the likes of Gordy Lightfoot there years and years ago. And then they got out of control, and Ingrid would have to stand on the couch with her whistle and say, "The police are coming," and people would clear out. So, we had fun. And, we lived comfortably. Not lushly or lavishly, but comfortably.
Very good. And you mentioned you've been married to John now for obviously quite a while.
49 years.
49 years. And what did John do in his career?
When I met him, he was with Dosco Steel, and then he left that and went with Canada Vinegar. So he was an accountant, and then he ended up as a VP with Canada Vinegars, Indian Summer in the U.S. And the latter part of his career, he was with Weston Foods.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now you moved. You mentioned that John was transferred a fair bit with his job. And what parts of the country, or parts of Canada and the U.S. have you lived in?
Well, we lived in, started out in Mississauga, and then we went to Collingwood, Belleville, and Waterloo. Then we were sent to the U.S., and our first sojourn was Evansville, Indiana, which was sort of an eye-opener. I think that's where the Ku Klux Klan got started.
Jeez.
Yeah, well, a lovely little neighborhood we lived in. I loved the people. And was in this ladies' group where you'd get together for tea. And there was a house for sale, and a black professor and his wife were wanting to buy the house. And they were trying to form a co-op to prevent this black couple from buying the house. And I was abhorred, just abhorred.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, Barbara, if you feel that way, you should move back to Canada. So I made wonderful friends, not in that neighborhood necessarily, but lovely friends in Evansville that I still stay in touch with.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, we went to Newark, New York, which is near Rochester on the Erie Canal.
Right.
And we bought a 150-year-old house that had a cupola on top of the roof.
What's a cupola?
Cupola is an extra little all-glassed room that the wives of the captains on the canal could go up and see if the ship was coming in.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. And Melissa loved it. She used to bring her friends, and they'd climb out the window and sunbathe on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
That was great. That was a nice...
Going back a little bit, describe your wedding.
My first or my second?
No, your second wedding.
My second wedding. I wore a shocking pink outfit, and Auntie and Uncle were our best man and maid of honor. And Uncle found a minister, because of him being in the banking business down in Bloor.
Mm-hmm.
He knew this Reverend Ivany, who ministered to the street people, and he was a wonderful man. And they hosted the wedding in their apartment.
Oh, wow.
And it was a lovely wedding. And then we all went back. John and I had been living together at the time. And we went back. We were in a townhouse in Mississauga. And we had our champagne and little sandwiches. And I loved Aunt and Uncle.
Oh, they were something special.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah. Yeah. What advice would you give to your child today or your grandchild on their wedding day?
Oh, my goodness. There's so many things. Not to settle for less, to, if you're unhappy, to ask for it. Let them know what's bothering you. Don't keep things bottled up. Be open, communicate. I think that's probably the most important thing is communication. Yeah.
Very good. And you named two of your three children, right?
No, I named them all. Melissa, Megan, and Molly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So where did the names come from? Are they family names?
Well, Melissa came with her name. Megan, when I was growing up in Hamilton, one of Dad's army buddies had a daughter. Megan Smith was her name. And she was this round-faced, chubby little girl that was always laughing, and I loved her. And I don't remember when the contact was lost, but I loved the name, so that's why I named Megan. And then Molly, that was my grandmother Foote's name, was Myra, but they always called her Molly. So that's...
Very good. And do you remember anything your children did, maybe small, that you were just amazed by when they were children? You're just like, oh my God, I can't believe they just did that.
Oh, all kinds of things, but I'm trying to recall them all. Melissa was rather a shy girl, and it was very hard on her because of her unsettled life in the beginning. But when we lived in Collingwood, she won a public speaking contest, and I was blown away with her poise, and she could embrace that. And Megan, her poetry, she won all kinds of awards with her poetry and her writing.
What would you do if you had an opportunity in raising your children in today's society, or if you, again, starting from scratch, from what you've learned, what would you do different, if anything?
Probably be more present, although I think I was fairly present as a parent. But then, when you're younger, there's so many other things that get in the way. And I certainly wouldn't want to raise kids today. I have great respect for parents that do it well today because of everything that's out there. There were never drugs when, of course, I was a teenager. I don't ever recall anything like that. Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, it's a different,
it is
definitely a different world, isn't it?
It is.
What's some of the funniest things you can remember that happened in your life?
Oh dear. Lots of things. It would take too long, Michael.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. What were your feelings when your first grandchild was born?
Oh, it was my 50th birthday. I think my 50th birthday. And we were living in Waterloo. I had worked that Saturday at the funeral home, and John had planned a surprise party for me. And Melissa went into labor in Fort Erie, where she had Madeline. So I wasn't present, but they sent down a video. And I remember sitting with all my friends and crying. It was such an experience.
Yeah.
And then with my youngest daughter's children, I was present at both their births. Well, the younger one came on the bedroom floor, so we were there about 5 or 10 minutes later.
Right.
That was something, really, to be there and hold them. And
yeah. Well, I remember our two, and I just said to my girls, give Mom that opportunity to be there, because it was just unbelievable.
Oh, it is.
It's just amazing. Yeah. Yeah. And
it's a good bonding experience.
Do you have any bad habits that you want to share with everybody?
Oh, yes. I don't have a lot of self-confidence, believe it or not. And I have a friend, I was at a get-together with a bunch of girlfriends here in Port Hope recently, and she said, you beat yourself up too much. She said, I'm going to buy a fly swatter for you. And every time I hear, this isn't any good, or whatever, I want you to hit yourself. So I would say I need to have more self-confidence. And, of course, I used to smoke. I wish I never had, but both my parents smoked, and my sister and brother gave it up much before me. Yeah.
Well, my dad worked for Rothmans.
Yes, I know. So, I remember him giving us
I didn't.
cigarettes.
Johnny smoked a bit. Sue smoked a fair bit. And my wife still smokes. But, you try and share that information. And
you can't do it. I remember in grade 9, the Cancer Society showing movies about people with their voice box removed and all this sort of thing. And I thought, I'm never going to have a cigarette. And boom.
Yeah.
It doesn't stay. So it's a personal thing. You have to give it up on your own.
Yeah. Do you regularly exercise?
I ride bike.
Okay.
now I went for about 3 years recently where my feet were bad and I couldn't walk. But I used to walk.
Mm-hmm.
I need to do more exercising, yes. But I find these hills in Port Hope kill me. That
That's pretty hilly.
when I'd ride a bike, easy to go downtown, but when you come back, I'd have to walk my bike up the hill.
Right.
And I found a fellow in Ottawa who builds electric bikes that are very light. They have a small little battery. And I thought, that's what I need. So I got one. We had to drive to Ottawa. I met the fellow. His dad had had a heart attack, was an engineer, and designed this for people that want to exercise but need a little assist now and again. So I was on my third ride at the end of September, 1st of October, riding down a big hill in Port Hope. And a friend was pulled out, did a U-turn, didn't see me, and hit me. And my bike was destroyed. Thank God I had a helmet on because my head hit the pavement and cracked my helmet. And so I got another electric bike, and I was out last night for about 2 hours on it. It's great, and I hardly ever use the electric part.
But it's there if you need it.
It's there if you need it, yeah.
And there's a few questions here that I went on the internet to find questions because I figured, and it was amazing. They had more than questions than enough. Hence why I think we're trying to cover a lot of different things here. Have you ever had any childhood diseases?
Oh yes, I had pneumonia 3 times or 4, which probably also contributes to the scarring on the lungs.
Mm-hmm.
And the usual chicken pox, I still have the scars, measles, but nothing devastating.
No. Well, that's good. And have you ever been a victim of crime?
Just when I was a teenager, I was followed home from the rink one night, and a man exposed himself to me, and that was, again, terrifying. I was maybe 14. Ran into a house I didn't know. The people just banged on the door, sobbing, crying, and they phoned the police, and I was too embarrassed to say that he had exposed himself. I just said he had chased me. Right.
Have you ever been in a serious accident aside from your biking accident?
A serious accident? No, not really. Although in the States, they had, where we lived in Mountaintop, they had diverted traffic from the main highway, 81, up 309, which was the highway that went through Mountaintop. And it was bumper to bumper, slow, slow, slow. And Molly and I were in the car. I had a little Subaru. I love Subarus. And anyway, I was sort of distracted, and I just touched the car in front of me. My airbags deployed. She bumped the car in front of her, and once I sort of gathered myself, I went and asked the lady in front of me, "Are you fine?" She was fine, no problems. Went to the lady that was at the front. "Are you all right?" And she said, "Well, yes, I'm fine, but I'd had back surgery in August, you know." And so that was that. I was glad everybody was fine. I wasn't charged. The policeman said we were just waiting. A year later, I get a call from the insurance company saying, "We think you're going to be sued." And this lady at the front sued John and I for $50,000 each. Him for letting me drive, number one. And I was just incensed. And the lawyer said, "You have to put everything in." And the long story is, the insurance company settled for $1,200. So that was the biggest accident.
What would you consider the most important invention during your lifetime?
Getting a man to the moon, getting space.
Have you seen the recent thing that SpaceX has done with the spaceships that they go up into orbit and they
then
shoot,
land.
then they bring it back down? Yeah, they
we
land.
were there this winter.
Yeah.
We saw 4 blast-offs, and we're right on the water, the condo we rent, and it went right by. The first time I ever saw one, I sobbed, because when I was a teenager, it was sort of sci-fi that somebody would go to the moon.
Yeah.
And so we really witnessed it.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and I would recommend anybody, if you have a chance, to go through the Kennedy Space Center.
Yeah. Well, we were down there in February, and we were going to go over, and we were staying with some friends, and they, his name's Larry, said, Mike, they're doing this space shot on Tuesday. We should go. And I said, well, I want to go. I don't want to go, and there's all these millions of people. He goes, no. And that's when he explained to me that it comes back down to the launch pad. I'm like, what? I'd go for that.
It doesn't come down to the launch. It comes down to a pad in the ocean.
Oh, does it? Okay.
It doesn't come back to where it was shot off, I'm quite sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because he showed me one that looked like it was landing right. It looked like the thing just went backwards.
Really?
So, anyways, but I've since seen the one in the ocean, so maybe it was just a...
Oh, maybe I'll have to do some research.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But we never got there because the weather came bad, and then they can't push it off for a few days. Do you remember your family discussing world events and the local politics?
Well, certainly local politics. They were both real conservatives. And Dad had people that harbored anybody on the side of the Germans during the war he had no respect for.
Mm-hmm.
But he would never talk about the war. I always wanted to know, what was it like?
Mm-hmm.
And he wouldn't talk about it. Yes, the horrendous things they saw. How
did you react to the assassination of JFK?
Oh, it was awful. He was a prince.
Mm-hmm.
It was... But even more disturbing, I thought, was 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
I was home living in Pennsylvania and saw it as it happened on the TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we all did. I mean, with the communication now and the internet and everything, it was something else for sure. Name a good friend that you've known the longest, and how many years you guys have been friends.
Well, there's two. My friend Ingrid Gadsden from Toronto. We've been friends for almost 60 years. And also Brenda Bathany, who also was a high school friend that we went to see the Leonard Cohen tribute on Sunday.
Very good.
Yeah, they're both very interesting women.
So have you ever had anyone in your life that you would consider a kindred spirit or a soulmate?
Oh, yes.
If so, who?
Oh. Ingrid and Brenda.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What are the hardest choices you've ever had to make in your life? I'm hoping you're not going to say I want fries with that.
You want this chair? It doesn't have arms. The hardest choices, oh dear, was, I guess, I don't know. There were lots. Going against my husband, there was some acrimony between. He didn't want. I don't think he ever wanted Melissa to reconnect with her mother. And when she was 16 and getting ready to go to Brockport University, we found out that she had a cousin she never realized that she had, who had died of leukemia. And I said, do you want to, should we try and get in touch with your mother? And I hunted her down, and they immediately started phoning and had this wonderful telephone relationship. And I felt such jealousy, and that was hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. And is there someone in your life that really changed your life? Someone that you can say, you know what, I met this person and they just gave me some advice, or something happened and I said, you know what, I like that. And
I think Uncle.
Yeah? Oh, interesting. That's Uncle Jack.
Uncle Jack.
Jack Graham, yeah. Michael Graham. Yeah.
Yeah, he was wonderful. He was always, he always had great advice for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you could change something about yourself, what would it be?
That, that I wouldn't be wearing my heart on my sleeve like I do. That I was more confident. Definitely more confident.
And did you ever play a musical instrument?
I took started piano lessons when I was 12, and mother was a very good pianist. And she would know when I was practicing that if I hit a wrong note, she'd be in the kitchen doing something and yell at me. And I hated practicing. But I stuck with it. I probably took it up too late. I should have been younger. So I took it for a year. And I can still, listen to a song and kind of pick it out with one hand.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to love going to Aunt Dell's when they lived on Besborough. And Joan used to be able to love both her and your dad did jazz. It was wonderful. Yeah. And then here, there a group of my friends belonged to a ukulele group, so I thought, I think I could learn to play the ukulele. So I bought a ukulele, and it's now gathering dust by my piano.
What is the funniest practical joke you ever played on somebody?
The funniest practical joke was my girls all loved horror movies, and they had friends over, and they were sitting on the couch when they were little watching a horror movie. I think it might have been Scream, and I had a Scream mask and a black thing, and it was summer, and I snuck out to the porch and quietly lifted the screen, and at a really scary part, I threw myself in through the window, and they were petrified. And I ripped my nice shorts to pieces on a nail that was on the window. But I've done lots of silly things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
Also, when I worked in the funeral home in Waterloo, I would sometimes have to lock up at night, and Molly and her friend, when they were just, I don't know how old they were. They weren't very old. But they used to love to come, and it was a huge big place, 2 floors, and run around, and I would never let them go into the visitation rooms, but I would go in every night and say good night to the open the caskets, and say I'll see you in the morning, and I wanted to give good vibes. So anyway, Molly and Quinn were coming in the front door, and they were walking down the hallway, and I went and hid and jumped out at them, and they were terrified. So I would do things like that.
What activities are you enjoying today?
Art. I developed, started taking art classes when we lived in Pennsylvania, and I just lose myself when I'm painting.
Oh, very good.
It's a real Zen-like thing. Any worries, any concerns, it's just gone. So I like painting, and I sing in a choir called Shout Sister, which was started by Georgette Fry, who is a Juno-nominated jazz singer. And she noticed women, when she entertained in clubs, all wanted to sing along, and if she invited them up to join, they were quite shy. So she started these choirs. You don't have to read music. You get your songs online, and it is a wonderful sisterhood.
Very good.
You feel great after being up there and bellowing out pop songs.
Very good. What is the most amazing thing that's ever happened to you?
The most amazing thing was probably having my children. Yeah.
Very good. And have you ever met anyone famous?
Ever met anyone famous? Oh, I'm sure I have. But it doesn't come to mind, but I'm sure I have. The Whitby Dunlops, when they won the World Championship.
Describe a time and a place that you remember feeling truly at peace and happy to be alive.
Um, Probably riding a bicycle with my girlfriends through Presqu'île Park in the fall when it was so beautiful and the waves were crashing up, and it was wonderful. Yeah.
Very good.
Breathing the air, feeling vibrant. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What's the most beautiful place that you've ever visited?
Oh, there's so many beautiful. Probably Newfoundland. I love Newfoundland.
Mm-hmm. My dad always talked about it. When he was time to retire, he'd love to go out there. Loved it.
It is gorgeous.
He loved the ocean and
the people and the landscape is so different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. John's brother and his wife and family are in St. John's. She's a cancer researcher and he teaches ESL. So we had an opportunity to certainly go and stay for a while. We did the whole circumference.
Very good. Do you have any pets?
We have had, and we were recently talking about maybe it's time for a dog again. We had we've had wonderful pets, but the best was our bearded collie, Tober.
Mm-hmm.
He lasted almost 17 years.
Yeah, pets. We've got several right now. And
have you?
Yeah.
Well, we've had guinea pigs and hamsters and fish and a horrible cat. We had a cat that in Pennsylvania, the rabbits for some reason would nest in our yard, and you'd be watching TV on a summer night and you'd hear these high-pitched screams, and the cat had caught baby rabbits and would bring them. And we had to put so many out of their misery. It was awful. And he had disappeared one time, and he was an old cat, and I thought, well, thank goodness he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
So we went looking for him, and no, he was not in sight, and I thought he's gone off to the woods behind us to die. And about 3 weeks later, my neighbor phoned and says, Barb, I've got a surprise for you. Meet me in the driveway. And she had the scrawny little remains of our river cat with her. He had been curious and checked out a house that was being remodeled and got locked in. And nobody knows how he survived. But he survived. Honest,
Wow.
that was probably a disappointing moment in my life.
So I'm just going to ask you a few things. What are your favorites as far as an animal?
Dogs.
Okay.
Dogs, definitely.
And an athlete. Who would be your favorite athlete?
Probably Terry Fox.
Okay. And a board game.
Definitely Scrabble.
Okay. And a book.
Oh, I love reading. So I loved All the Light We Cannot See.
Mm-hmm. That's fine.
And Lawrence Hill.
And what's your favorite candy?
My favorite candy? I'm not really into candies. I'm more a savory person.
Okay.
I crave salt a lot.
And what about card game?
Card game? I love bridge and euchre.
Okay. Favorite ice cream?
Favorite ice cream? I think you can't beat French vanilla. But
Okay.
I like coffee, peanut butter, chocolate.
Okay. Holiday?
Favorite holiday? Well, we have a boat, and I really enjoyed being in the Thousand Islands, tied up on a ball, and swimming. Yeah.
Very good. And favorite meal?
My favorite meal? Probably a pasta meal. Love pasta.
Okay. Movie star?
Movie star, you can't beat Paul Newman. I loved him.
Okay. And movie?
Movie. Oh, I guess it has to be The Sound of Music.
Okay. And musical group?
Musical group?
Or musician, if there's a singular.
I'm stuck in the 50s tonight.
Yeah.
I love all the old 50s tunes.
That's fine. That's fine. Restaurant do you like to?
I love sushi. So anything sushi or Thai.
Okay. And what season do you like best?
Any season where there aren't snakes. So late fall,
Okay.
early spring before they come out.
And what favorite sport do you like to watch?
Do I like to watch? Well, I'm not really a sports person, but I do like the playoff games, football. I like what we watch the Raptors, March Madness. Yeah.
And your favorite TV program?
We don't watch much TV.
Okay.
But I was hooked on American Idol because I sing in the choir.
Sure.
So I'm very sad that it's no longer.
Mm-hmm.
It's all over.
If given the opportunity to sit down and have dinner with anyone from your past or the past, or potentially your future or the future, who would it be and why?
There's just so many.
I've had some really interesting answers to this question because I've asked everybody, and a couple of them, you're dealing with guys, and again, I mentioned earlier, we're doing a lot of hockey conversation, and, one guy broke us down in tears the way he presented the answer to the questions. I was just blown away. Where some people bring people I've never heard of, other people say, "Oh, my parents," or whatever, or, so it's always been my last question, and it's something that I find really interesting because I find it. You're sitting around, Thanksgiving table,
it's a great
and you sit there and go, "Okay, so
conversational.
let's go around the table one by one," and even year to year it changes sometimes and stuff like that. So it's an interesting.
I think really probably my grandmother Foote, because when I look back, I have feelings for her, and I remember smells, but I don't really remember her.
Right.
So her and probably Aunt and Aunt Dell.
Yeah.
I loved them dearly, and we had so much fun, and
yeah. They were definitely a unique group.
They were.
Yes.
And there would be questions. I was reading something that said we should all ask our children, do you have any questions you'd like to ask me that you'd like to know the answer for that we've never discussed?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is our closing, and I wondered if there's anything that I haven't touched on that you'd like to share, or if you have any questions for me that I can maybe answer for you.
I think we've really got it covered.
I think so.
It's going to be a long one.
Yes.
No, not really.
Okay. Well, Barb, thank you very much for being the first. This was great, and I learned a lot, and I think that's why I enjoy doing this type of thing, because it's fascinating, even though we're cousins. It's just interesting to get a little bit more, because obviously our ages are a little different, and so we're seeing a different side of each other, so I think it's great.
Yes.
So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks.
And enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes. Thank you. Now can